Hey guys, welcome back to Diving Deep in Thought. You're here with Elias, and today I want to talk to you guys about the acronym I gave you a few days ago regarding the four components that make us the most fully fledged ultimate human beings that we can be, to increase the depth and richness in which we live our lives through our senses, through our emotions, through our physical bodies, through movement, agility. So I've given you the four different components, which is the spirituality, the emotional component, the mental component, and the physical. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about the mental component, which is the brain and the mind, which work hand in hand. You can't have the mind without the brain. And I'll explain to you the difference between the mind and the brain, and how we can influence both so that your brain works more optimally and you enhance the access you have to your mind. So what is the brain? Well, the brain is an organ that's right here. There's an upper brain and a lower brain. So I'm just briefly going to go through the anatomy quickly, just some of the segments of it. Because if I tell you the different parts of the brain, you will appreciate how much this wonderfully magnificent organ is helping you out in life. And you realize how complex the brain really is. Because if it doesn't have a complexity, you're not going to have the appreciation for it. So I'm just going to go briefly. There's an upper brain and a lower brain. This is the upper brain. This is the lower brain. The upper brain is much, much bigger, and it deals with more stuff we can control. So you've got, in the upper brain, you've got like the frontal lobe, which deals with your emotions. Then you've got the parietal lobe right at the top, which deals with your sensory input, so touching and other senses. The back is the occipital lobe, which is more for vision. And at the bottom, we've got the temporal lobe, which is for memory. So these are the four lobes of the upper brain. And the lower brain is actually very small relative to the upper brain. And the lower brain actually controls most things that are involuntary. So the three parts, the main parts of the lower brain are the cerebellum, the hypothalamus, or the thalamus, and you've got the brainstem. And these three little parts down here control everything involuntary, from blinking to breathing, swallow. It's the things that you don't want to think about. Heartbeat, your lungs working, all the organs in your body. So I just want you to get an understanding and appreciate just how much the brain receives information, analyzes it, processes it, and makes meaning of it. It's very important. So it receives, it gathers, it makes memories. Everything you see, we take it for granted, but everything you see is getting processed by this little guy up here, and it's making sense of everything. So when you lose your mind, that means you've lost the way you see the world. You haven't necessarily lost your brain. Your brain is the organ that keeps the rest of the body going. It's half of the central nervous system. So enough about the anatomy. We don't really care too much about that. I want to get into the meat of this. So the meat of this is what we can do, consciously do, to have a healthier brain. So the brain is like the hardware. It's the things you can see and touch if you were to ever get a hold of it. So it's the hardware. So in a computer, the hardware is basically all the parts that you can see. The screen, the keyboard, everything you can physically see is the hardware. That is the brain. The software is the mind. This is the programs. So you can only visually see the programs through that screen. But everything has to work so you can see it through the screen. So can you imagine a bigger screen, more optimized computer, processor, all these things? Could you imagine that you're going to get information quicker? Wouldn't you also agree that you're going to get more valuable output out of it because you can upload greater software? So this is what we're doing. By upgrading this guy in here and we're receiving information at a higher level, and we're receiving greater quantities of it and in greater richness. You got to imagine, you got a small screen without very good resolution. Imagine a bigger one. And the brain, if we optimize it, can obviously give us more information much quicker and much more efficiently. So what can we do to increase our brain's health and well-being so that our mind can grow? So one thing that our brain does a lot of is it takes a lot of oxygen and energy into our bodies. It processes a lot of oxygen, which creates oxidative stress, which is basically sacrificing neurons in our brain which help us process information, and it's burning them out. And by sleeping, so sleeping is the first biggest reason for your brain. Without sleep, your brain can't rest and you usually get agitated, your body can't heal properly. So sleeping, having some downtime, what sleeping does is it lowers all the processes in your body and it brings it down to an idling state. Only the essential things are happening when you're sleeping, like your survival mechanism of your body. So you're not overthinking, you're not in an anxious state which affects the rest of your body. You're not thinking too far ahead. You're usually in a dream-like state where you access parts of the subconscious. That's how restful you are during sleep. So sleep is really important. The hours of sleep is dependent on the person. Doctors say 8 hours, some people say 6 hours, but it all comes, it's a combination of things. So it's diet, the chemical composition of your body, your brain. So the hours of sleep varies, but generally it's between 6 to 8 hours. Too much sleep is obviously not good for you either. It's not good for your other organs because they're not working as often, just like having a car sitting in the garage. So too much sleep is not good for your vital organs, and too little sleep deprives the brain of the rest, the neuron replacement that happens when you're in that restful state. The next one is reading books. So I know a lot of people don't like to read. If you don't like to read, another way to stimulate the mind is using Audible, which is what I use. I listen to books, and sometimes I listen to them quicker than normal. So I'll listen to them at 1.3 times speed, which is a lot quicker. And it just helps you get through the book quicker, and you adapt to that fastness. But reading is very important. It increases your focus. It increases your attention span. It lets your imagination flow. It helps you to grasp concepts and perspectives that otherwise you would never encounter, because most people in this real world don't go into too much depth. They don't go into as much depth as a book. You got to remember, this guy spent 10 years of his life putting the best parts of his life into a book so he can sell it and monetize and make money off it. So they're going to get really deep in some books, and there's some amazing books. I'll do one video on some of the books I've read that have really touched me. But reading is really, really important. If you don't like to read books, like I said, listen to them. It's the same type of stimulation. It's still getting your mind focused on that. And obviously it's for concentration because you're listening to that book. Other ways to challenge the mind are through mixing up your daily routine. So your brain has these neurological paths. Our brains are very efficient. You got to remember, they go through over 60,000 thoughts a day, and the brain over time gets a bit I won't say lazy, it gets efficient. So when the brain gets efficient, it finds ways to stack information in places that are easily accessible, and they're called habits. Now, our habits are formed by doing the same thing over and over, and it's very easy for our mind to keep getting to that information because it's stored on this shelf. So to break habits challenges the mind, and it does make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you know what that means? That means you're challenging your mind. Just like when you challenge your body and your muscles. They go under stress, and stress that's controllable is very good because it stretches that, it stretches the ability that it has, and it pushes it beyond what would, where it would draw the line for being too much. So challenging your mind by, using your other hand to brush, using the wrong hand. So by brushing your teeth with the wrong hand, which is if you're right-handed, you do it with the left hand, that sort of stimulates a different part of your brain. And you got to remember, the brain has 2 hemispheres, and each hemisphere controls the opposite side of the body. So if you're always doing stuff with your right hand, guess what? The left hemisphere is going to be working hard, and the other one's going to be slacking back. But then if you do your left hand, the right hemisphere is going to be working. So by mixing up the, whether you use your legs or your arms, or when you're at the gym. By changing things up, we're stimulating different parts of the brain. And like I told you, the brain is very, very powerful. It can take pressure. So don't push it too much, but it can take a bit more pressure than it normally is used to. So that's important to challenge the mind doing stuff like that. You can also challenge the mind through doing analytical things, which is like, crosswords, or, a bit of mathematics, science, just taking in information, which is challenging the mind. It also challenges parts of the mind. Like I told you, there's different parts for different things. So the more things you explore, the more things you do, and the more in depth you get into different things, the mind will obviously activate different regions, and the more the whole mind is activated, the more it works together. The mind synergetically works. So what's happening is, when you work one part a lot and the other part not too much, what tends to happen is the energy in the mind goes to one area, and the other area that doesn't get much energy or much activation, it starts to atrophy. And later in life, you find issues where you're deprived of certain feelings or emotions or sensory issues. This is because throughout your life, you never really practice that part of your mind. So it's essential that we try to focus on different parts of our mind by looking at what instigates what area. Another thing that can help you activate different parts of your mind from a perspective point of view, or just an emotional point of view, is being socially interactive with people. So meeting new people, facing your fears, doing all these things builds up self-esteem, builds up self-confidence, gives you a sense of empathy. These are very important things for our mind, because we are social creatures. We like to see real people. It's no good always looking at screens. The reason for that being, it's all one-sided. When you got to remember, you're looking at a screen for hours on end, and your imagination is or isn't, your lack of imagination, I must say, is running wild. See, the mind does not know the difference between what is real and what is fake. Because when you see something, your body feels it. When your body feels it, it sends a message to your brain, and your brain takes in that information. So when you see something, they're your sensory nerves. Your sensory nerves take information and bring it into your brain, which is through your hands or your eyes, your ears, whatever. Your sensory nerves bring it. It processes it, and then it sends it back into your body as motor nerves. And this is the response. So it's very important that we see real people, go out and see real nature, not the representation of people and nature on a phone, actually going out and seeing it. And the next one is food. It's really important to eat your greens, veggies, and fruits. Everyone keeps telling you, but they don't tell you why. They got vitamins and minerals you can't get from anything else. So although people have this goal of just getting full, that's not good enough. Getting full is not a good enough excuse. You need to fuel your mind, and your mind needs to be fueled by water or an electrolyte drink if you're doing a lot of physical activity. Keeping alcohol down, obviously, because alcohol stunts the way we think and actually removes memory. And it's been known that when you're intoxicated, you remember nothing. That just shows you how much it blocks out from your conscious mind to your unconscious mind. So it's very powerful, putting anything that has high potency in blocking that out. But food is very important. Greens are amazing for your brain, fruits and veggies, but also fatty fish and eggs and lean meats can also replenish the energy that your brain goes through on a daily basis in terms of burning up fats, and they can replenish them. So eating an avocado or having some barramundi or salmon, it's really good for you. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is physical activity. This is absolutely paramount for everything, so mind and body. Physical activity obviously You don't have to do too much of it in order to get your brain stimulated. In order for your brain to be stimulated for up to 6 or 7 hours, it has been shown in experiments that 10 to 20 minutes worth of intense physical activity. And when I say intense, I mean bringing it up to about 7 out of 10 difficulty. So just 10 to 20 minutes of strenuous physical activity challenges the body, but also challenges the mind. So it improves stuff like coordination, it improves blood flow, it improves your attention because you're actually holding onto something. So as I was telling you earlier about the different parts of the brain, imagine how many parts are being engaged by physical activity alone. Physical activity is essential. And when we say high intensity, that could mean sprint stop, that could mean compound exercises that you feel are right for your body and your posture. And it's just basically anything that gets your heart beating quick. That is physical activity. Whatever form you wish to do is up to you, but that's very important. And it keeps you going for 6 to 7 hours after. So there's your energy without putting any sugar in you. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the idea of meditation and prayer, self-affirmations, any of these isolated activities where you're essentially giving the brain, now this is everything I've told you so far is just the organ. Now this is where the brain becomes the mind. So like I told you, the brain is the computer, the mind is everything that you ever know. Everything. So the brain, you don't know your brain, but you know your mind, and your mind has your whole life stored. So the mind is everything. But if you don't have a healthy brain, your mind, your sphere of influence, your sphere of knowledge, the way you see the world gets smaller. So can you see how the brain is so important? It's very important we take care of the brain so that our mind enlarges. So the mind is the connection that the physical body has with the world and the spiritual part of us. So the mind is the intersection between this physical world and the spiritual world. Now that in itself is very, very powerful. So if we're going to think of it like this, the healthier the mind, the brain, the greater the mind. So doing things like meditation, being in silence, talking, understanding who you really are without the distractions, without the noise, without orders from the rest of the world. Just sit in silence for 5 minutes and observe. Get into normal breathing pattern, close your eyes, sit in a comfortable position, and just do nothing. Meditation is just doing nothing. It's the absence of doing something. Just sit there in silence and observe what your body is telling you, observe what your mind is telling you, observe all the stresses that are coming into your brain telling you that you should be stressing at that point in time. Cut it all out. Just sit there and observe. So that's meditation. There's different types of meditation. There's heaps. But it's important that you just sit in silence for a bit. Understand where you're at. Feel your body, feel your mind. So the mind is very powerful. As positive as the mind is, it's also negative. Because we're so complicated and we're such complex beings, having a mind that serves us will build you up, and it becomes fake. It creates an ego and it creates this disconnect. It builds these big walls. But on the other side of that, there's a dark side to the mind. Because it's got to be stimulated all the time, because it's so powerful, it follows commands. And 96% of the decisions we make are subconscious. So it really shows that you're not in control. Now, what can we do about this? What can we do about the dark side? What does that tell you when you see things and you're not happy with them? When you see a person and you have a hatred toward them? When you see yourself and your self-talk is negative? That's the subconscious. But we never look at it like that. We blame the conscious mind. We blame the conscious body. This is why the mind plays tricks on us. This is why meditation is powerful. This is why being liberated from your thoughts for 5 minutes is important. because they don't give us a break. Prayer is not about you praying, you seeking. It's about offloading. It's about giving out. Giving is receiving. Service becomes something of repayment. Just by doing a good deed, you feel good. This is why it's so important to nurture our mind. It's everything outside the mind. You cannot fix the mind using thinking. A lot of the ways we can heal the mind and heal the body is by doing. Lose your problems in the service of solving other people's problems. Try that. This is why I tell people, and it's up to you to do it, just say hi to everyone. And regardless of the response, who cares? You're just saying hi. So do things that are good, say things that are good, and what that does is it conditions your mind to positivity. But the moment you start, despising people, being negative toward people, who's really suffering from that? You have the power of your thoughts, and yet you're surrendering your thoughts to something negative. That means your mind has control over you. And it's really hard for people to separate this. I know this is deep, but the thing is, this is what some people need to hear. Meditate, pray. Of course, it's not going to feel right sometimes. Sit alone for 5 minutes. It is not that bad. Do it and have control over your mind, because your mind will control you. It will do what it wants to do, but you're in control. So yeah, that's the video for today. So that's the brain and the mind. I hope I've hit some topics that have triggered a thought in your mind, or have made you in your mind, or have tickled your brain. This is a big topic. Obviously, I can't cover it, and obviously you can see how excited I am to give you guys information that I've received over the years. But it's really important, man. Take some time out, relax, take a holiday. Don't listen to music. Don't be stimulated. For once, see the power of silence. Face yourself. Talk to yourself. Nurture yourself. You'll be amazed how beautiful you are. But if you don't give yourself a chance to see that, that's the biggest burden you can ever do to yourself. So look inwards, and this is why I do these videos. Dive in deep in thought. I don't know if this is deep enough, but it feels just right telling yous, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you believe someone else needs this message, please like, subscribe, and share so it can get out into the YouTube universe. Thank you.